The story takes place a long time ago, back when I was a kid and had frequent nightmares. Every time I would have one, I'd wake up and run into my parents' room and climb into their bed. Some nights they would be awake enough to take me back to my room, where I would just find one of my siblings' rooms to run to. Other nights they would be fast asleep and I could sneak in unnoticed. That night was one of those nights. Because of my constant going into their room at night, they started leaving a nightlight on in their room for me. I can't specifically remember the nightmare I had. I just remember racing to my parents' room because I was so afraid of the dark. I slowed down when I got to their room and quietly opened the door, making my way to their bed. How the room was set up was the door was right across from my parents' bed, so I could vaguely see their sleeping silhouettes. My parents liked to sleep completely in the dark, and if it wasn't for the nightlight they put in for me, I would have been more afraid to go into their room. A few feet from the right of the bed was the bathroom, and to the left of the bed, my parents' closet and my daddy's desk. I climbed up into the foot of the bed, pushing slowly under the covers where my feet were facing the top of the bed and my head was by my parents' feet. I figured it would be easier to sneak out if my parents started stirring. My head stuck out a little bit from the covers, but I felt better and started to drift off. I wasn't sure how much time passed, but I woke up to something brushing past my head. I looked up to see that my parents' door was now open, and what appeared to be a figure walking into the hallway. At first I thought it was my brother, who used my parents' bathroom often because he didn't have one in his room. But my brother wasn't very tall, and this figure almost reached the top of the doorway. The figure had disappeared into the dark, and for some reason I waited to see if it would come back. Surprisingly not afraid, just confused. Sometime during the night, I fell asleep, waiting, and woke up to my parents getting ready for work. We talked for a little bit, and I crawled out the bed to get ready for school. Nothing was out of the ordinary, and I had almost forgot about that night before until I ran into my brother. He was on his way to my parents' room, and I asked him if he had gone in the night before to the bathroom, thinking maybe in the dark he appeared taller than he actually was. He roughly said no and pushed past me into my parents' room. He had his sheets balled up under his arm that smelled like he wet himself. My memory of the night before was replaced with anger as I yelled, "Pee pants!" at him. I got ready for school and the day went on. My family and I are moving to a different state for my dad's job. I was helping my brother pack up his room when he brought it up out of nowhere. "Do you remember that morning in the hallway when you asked me had I come into Mom and Dad's room?" "Yeah," I replied. Well, that night I had woken up and really had to use the bathroom. I had noticed that my bedroom door was open, and I wondered if you had tried to come into my room. I was just about to get up when I saw something walk up to my doorway. Its head almost reached the ceiling, but I couldn't make out any features. It looked like it tried to take a step into my room, and then decided not to and walked back down the hall. I tell you, I was the most creeped out I had ever been in my life. My family just never talked about things like that. My parents are super religious, so even if I would have brung up something like this to them, I doubt that they would even care or humor me about it. I've done my research, and from what I can gather, my brother and I might have seen that night was a shadow person. Though looking back on it, it brushed past my head. It felt solid, like a person. So how could it have been a shadow? I don't know anymore, and the more I think about it, the more it scares me.
This story is not my own, but my little sister's. It was a school night, and I was laying down, trying to get some sleep, when I saw a figure in the doorway of our closet. We didn't have doors up in our closet, only a curtain, but that night I forgot to close them, so I could clearly see something transparent in color, with its knees and elbows bent backwards. I began to sweat and struggle to move. I thought if only I could get the light switch, everything would be fine. It began clawing and scrambling its way towards me. Encouraged by my lack of movement, it began to twist its way onto the foot of my bed, when I suddenly managed to snap over to the light switch. Breathing a sigh of relief as the light flooded the room, I quickly glanced towards the foot of my bed to see an empty closet.